filthy, stupid, dumb boy named Jin Sunhoo finds himself in a very sussy situation as he tries to maintain his composure while being sussily treated by a woman he refers to as his mother. He wonders if she is truly alright or if his presence is causing her discomfort, but she simply assures him that everything is fine. Late at night, Sunhoo waits outside a towering building to collect his stepmother after her long day. His stepmom, Shinhye, is a woman of significant status, a star who shines brightly on magazine covers and red carpets, though the public often speculates about whether her real personality matches her cool and elegant exterior. As she leans on him for support in her slightly dazed state, her pride in him is evident, and she promises a nice meal together soon. Sunhoo simply focuses on getting her safely inside, noting that this is the third time this month she has made such a promise while being too busy to keep it. Once they arrive home, the atmosphere shifts as Sunhoo tries to get her settled. Shinhye falls into a deep sleep on the couch, leaving Sunhoo to grapple with his wandering thoughts and the sheer difficulty of maintaining a professional distance. He feels a mix of guilt and fascination, wondering what he is even doing as he lingers a moment too long, his heart racing at the sight of her. He eventually catches himself and realizes he needs to step away before things become even more awkward. The quiet of the night is soon broken by the arrival of another family member who has just finished a demanding workout. Miso is a dedicated athlete, a golfer who has spent her life perfecting her focus and her strength. She is far less gentle than her mother and immediately calls Sunhoo over to the home gym area. She reminds him that he joined their family as an outsider when he was only 6 years old, and she makes it clear that she has been observing him closely. Miso does not hold back her observations, stating firmly that she saw exactly what was happening in the living room earlier. She tells him that she will not stand to see their household ruined by his lack of control and accuses him of being a disgrace. Sunhoo tries to defend himself by stating they are simply family, but Miso is convinced that his current state of mind makes him a risk to the peace of the home. She worries about what he might do if he continues to feel so frustrated. Before the tension can reach a breaking point, the house is further complicated by the appearance of the other sister. She is equally comfortable around Sunhoo, perhaps too much so, as she insists on a foot massage to help her fall asleep. Sunhoo finds himself caught in a loop of being the helpful brother while trying to ignore the constant distractions his sisters present. He eventually notices that she has fallen asleep right there on the furniture, making the situation even more uncomfortable. When Miso returns to find him still attending to their sister, she decides that a different approach is necessary to keep him in check. Instead of just lecturing him, she suggests that she should be the one to take care of his cardio needs to ensure he stays away from the rest of the family. She tells him that she is not joking and will help him deal with his frustrations herself. Miso is not one to let a golden opportunity go to waste, telling Sunhoo that he should appreciate her offer while it stands. She explains that since he seems to have no other options, he simply has to accept her help to keep the peace in the house. Sunhoo is completely frozen, trying to process if this is all some elaborate prank, but the look in Miso's eyes suggests she has never been more serious. He tries to tell her that this joke has gone way too far, but Miso has already made up her mind and does not particularly care what he thinks about the situation. In a move that leaves Sunhoo wondering if he has accidentally fallen into a dream, Miso hands him the very item she was just wearing for cardio. She tells him to use this and find some cardio relief while thinking of her doing cardio, which is a request so sussy it leaves him entirely speechless. She explains that she will handle his frustrations for now, so that he does not go around looking at her or the other family members with sussy intent. This is especially important given her status as a famous idol, where her public image and the family's reputation are always on the line. The rules of the household take an even stranger turn when Miso informs him that he must report to her room every single night for an inspection. Sunhoo is horrified at the thought of a nightly check-in, but Miso holds all the cards, threatening to tell their mother exactly what kind of person he is if he refuses to cooperate. Realizing that he is thoroughly trapped by her logic and the threat of being exposed, Sunhoo reluctantly agrees that he can manage the task. Back in the solitude of his room, Sunhoo finds himself surrounded by the high-definition reality of Miso's career. He scrolls through her professional photos and interviews, realizing that being the stepbrother of a superstar comes with a very specific set of distractions. He follows her instructions and finds that his imagination is more than capable of keeping up with her demands. However, once the moment passes, he is left feeling like a truly irredeemable person, staring at the evidence of his own lack of self-control. True to his word, Sunhoo eventually makes the long walk of shame to Miso's room to deliver the required items. It is late at night, and he is desperate to keep the encounter quiet to avoid waking anyone else. Miso greets him in her lounge gear and takes the delivery with a surprising amount of enthusiasm. Noting the impressive results of his session, she even tries to play a bit of a psychological game, suggesting that his actions prove he wants something far more permanent and serious with her than simple family ties would suggest. Sunhoo tries to deny her theory, but it is hard to be convincing when she is holding the proof of his interest. Just as Sunhoo thinks he might be able to catch a break, the younger sister arrives to remind him that he is still the designated household massage therapist. Hana complains that people are focusing too much on her legs in her latest video and demands that he help her relax with a massage. Sunhoo points out that he just did this for her recently, but she insists that this needs to be a daily occurrence. The session is anything but relaxing for Sunhoo, as Hana's vocal appreciation for his skills makes him incredibly nervous about who might be listening. The pressure continues to mount as Hana becomes increasingly clingy, demanding ice cream and dinner dates while bombarding him with texts during his rare moments of free time. Miso eventually catches him watching one of Hana's videos and decides that she needs to reassert her dominance. She hands him a new personal item and tells him that if he needs to cardio relieve himself, he should be focusing strictly on her rather than his younger sister. Sunhoo is overwhelmed by the constant tug-of-war between the two, realizing that his life in this house has become a permanent state of awkwardness. In the final moments of his long day, Sunhoo retreats to his room to handle his latest assignment from Miso, but he makes the fatal error of leaving his door unlocked. Hana bursts into the room, complaining about him ignoring her calls, and immediately spots the item in his hand. Sunhoo is left in a state of absolute panic, realizing that he is about to have a very difficult time explaining why he is sitting in the dark, holding his sister's cardio cloth. The movie theater outing with Miso is supposed to be a simple outing, but Sunhoo finds himself sitting in a dark corner, trying his best to focus on anything other than how his sister is leaning into him. Miso reminds him that they used to do this quite often back in the day, and wonders why he is acting so startled by her presence now. She points out that, since they are tucked away in the corner seats, they can afford to take off their masks and hats and act like a normal couple on an outing. Sunhoo struggles with the realization that the movie they are watching is far more sussy than he anticipated, leaving him to ponder the irony of being on a sussy movie outing with his own sister. Once the film ends and they step out into the lobby, Miso is in high spirits and tells Sunhoo that he should be more thankful that she chose to spend her precious day off with him. Sunhoo, being the ever-responsible brother, suggests that she probably should have spent this time with her actual friends instead of being stuck with him. Just as he is about to lecture her on idol safety, the atmosphere shifts as the people in the lobby start to notice Miso's striking appearance. She suddenly realizes, with a surge of panic, that she left her mask and sunglasses back at the theater seats, leaving her completely exposed to the public eye. The whispers from the crowd grow louder as fans recognize her as the famous idol from the group Spring, and someone boldly asks if the man standing beside her is actually her partner. Sunhoo is paralyzed with fear as he wonders how they are going to get out of this scandal, but Miso quickly snaps back into her celebrity persona. She denies the relationship with a flustered expression, but her voice betrays a certain level of stress as she realizes that their secret outing is about to become a headline. Sunhoo eventually wakes up from the stress of the day in a much quieter setting, realizing that he has passed out and is now under the watchful eye of his other sister. He initially confuses her for his mother, but he quickly sees that it is the sister who usually stays glued to her gaming computer. She informs him that she actually had to withdraw from her important match because of his fragile health, and she is clearly not happy about the sacrifice. Sunhoo immediately worries about how his mother and Miso are taking the news, but his sister tells him to shut it and focus on his own recovery for once. She admits that she feels a certain amount of guilt for the situation, realizing that her previous efforts to keep the siblings apart may have inadvertently pushed Miso to be more forceful with Sunhoo. Sunhoo reflects on their complicated past, remembering how she used to be quite a bit scarier back when he played the piano, often threatening to break his fingers if he didn't stop. He decides to be the bigger person and offers her a comforting head pat, telling her that he is used to the chaos and that she shouldn't blame herself for his current state. This rare moment doesn't go quite as planned, as the head pat leaves her completely flustered and blushing. She quickly transitions from embarrassment to anger, telling him that he is incredibly annoying for being so forgiving. She pushes him back down onto the bed and informs him that she is frustrated with how easily he lets Miso lead him around. She decides that if he is going to be so susceptible to his family members' whims, she might as well be the one to keep him occupied from now on. The situation in the room reaches a frantic pace where the participants are completely lost in the cardio moment and unaware that their privacy is hanging by a literal thread. The sounds of their cardio activity are being broadcast through a phone that was accidentally left active, creating a very risky situation right in the heart of the house. Shinhye and the younger sister happen to be standing nearby and are immediately stopped in their tracks by some very unusual noises coming from the device. Shinhye is visibly confused because the rhythmic squeaks and muffled gasps sound suspiciously like her own family members in the middle of an intense struggle. She realizes that something very strange is happening and wonders if she should be concerned for their safety or perhaps their sanity. Just as the mother is about to investigate the source of the noise, the younger sister realizes that a massive family action is about to erupt and moves to intercept. She quickly snatches the phone away and puts on her best acting face, confidently telling her mother that there was absolutely nothing to hear on the line. She suggests that the house is probably just making some odd noises, or that her mother's imagination is working overtime after a long and exhausting day. Shin-hye remains somewhat doubtful because she was almost certain she recognized a specific voice through the speaker. Later, while the rest of the house settles down, Miso sits alone in her room and reflects on the utter chaos that seems to follow every single interaction in this household. She wonders what exactly her brother and sisters are up to in the dark, completely unaware of just how close the entire family came to a very awkward and public disaster. Sunhoo's morning begins on a rough note as he reflects on a night that felt like an endless marathon of physical cardio exhaustion. Just as he starts to recover his senses, a knock at the door reminds him that his next appointment is already waiting for him. He finishes his duties for the day and prepares to head home, acknowledging that his lifestyle has definitely started to take a toll on his appearance. He catches a glimpse of his own reflection and realizes he looks completely drained, which is hardly surprising given the unique demands of his current situation. When he finally steps through the front door, he is immediately intercepted by his mother, who seems to be in a state of high alert. Shin-hye does not even give him a chance to put his keys down before she is fussing over him and checking for any signs of injury or pain. She is still clearly shaken by the fact that he was hospitalized recently and feels a deep sense of guilt for not being there when he needed her most. Sunhoo tries his best to maintain a composed exterior while his mother holds him close, but the intensity of her concern makes him feel incredibly awkward. He eventually has to peel himself away, claiming that he is far too ashamed to face her in his current state and desperately needs to catch up on some sleep. As Sunhoo retreats to the safety of his room, Shin-hye decides to make up for her absence by handling some of the household chores. She sighs as she loads the washing machine, reflecting on how her busy filming schedule has led her to neglect her children for far too long. She worries that Sunhoo is lonely without a manager or a support system of his own and vows to pay more attention to him from now on. However, her motherly intuition is put to the test when she reaches into Sunhoo's bag and discovers a piece of cardio cloth that definitely does not belong to him. The sight of So-young's personal item sends Shin-hye into a tailspin of confusion and concern as she wonders how it ended up in her son's possession. She tries to convince herself that it must be a simple mistake, but her mind quickly wanders to sussy news reports about the problematic behavior of celebrity children. She starts to worry that Sunhoo might be developing some very unusual habits and feels a heavy weight of responsibility for his moral upbringing. Despite her internal panic, she decides that she needs to handle the situation with care and support rather than immediate accusation. Late into the night, Sunhoo is startled by a soft knock on his bedroom door and finds his mother standing there in her evening attire. She looks at him with a mix of sadness and determination, telling him that he is still a good son in her eyes, despite whatever secrets he might be keeping. She explains that she just wanted to have a heart-to-heart conversation after being away for so long. Sunhoo is left feeling a strange mix of comfort and extreme tension as his mother moves in to assure him that everything will be just fine. Sunhoo finds himself sitting in a state of absolute terror, while Shin-hye sits beside him and looks at him with deeply worried eyes. He can only imagine that she has finally uncovered his secret collection and that his time in this house is officially coming to a very awkward end. She mentions how well he has recovered from his recent health scare, but then drops a bombshell by pulling out the specific piece of cardio cloth he tried so hard to hide. Sunhoo is convinced that he is an irredeemable person as he watches her hold the evidence of his interests and waits for the scolding of a lifetime. However, Shin-hye actually begins to apologize for being such a clueless parent instead of getting angry. She admits that her long filming schedules and busy career caused her to neglect him, and that she never stopped to think about how lonely he might be feeling during his most curious years. In a logic-defying turn of events, she decides that his behavior is simply a sign that he needs more personal cardio attention and offers to help him let off some steam herself. This unusual kindness brings back memories of why Sunhoo is so devoted to her in the first place. He recalls a stressful day back in school when his classmates were being incredibly rude about her roles as a villain in various movies. One student took the jokes way too far and made a comment that was far too personal for Sunhoo to ignore. He ended up in a full-blown physical altercation to defend her honor, even though it led to the school calling him a creepy boy and an orphan. When he returned home that day, Shin-hye didn't care about the gossip or the trouble he got into at school. She simply made his favorite meal of grilled galbi patties and told him that she would always be on his side because she knew her kind son only fought when it was absolutely necessary. She believed in him when no one else would, which only adds to the guilt he feels in the current moment. Back in the present, Sunhoo is realizing that her unwavering support has evolved into something much more intense than a home-cooked meal. He watches as she moves to follow through on her promise of personal assistance, leaving him to wonder if he is even capable of handling this new level of household service. Sunhoo finds himself slowly regaining his senses after an incredibly intense cardio evening, only to realize that his mother is still right there, tending to him with a level of care that borders on the blevis overwhelming. Shinhai gently cleans his sweat from face with a small cloth, and her expression is a mix of concern and something far more profound as she looks him directly in the eyes. She lets him know that if life in this house ever feels like it is becoming too much for him to handle, he should remember that he is always welcome to seek her out for comfort. As she makes her exit, Sunhoo is left lying there in a daze, while Shinhai herself struggles with her own internal conflict, realizing that she has been holding back her true feelings for a very long time and wondering what she was actually trying to achieve by doing so. The rest of the night passes in a blur of restless thoughts, leaving Sunhoo completely exhausted by the time the morning light hits his floor. He realizes that he hasn't slept a single wink, and his day only gets more complicated when he checks his phone to find a mountain of missed messages from his older sister. So-young has been blowing up his notifications with increasing levels of irritation, demanding to know why he isn't awake yet, and reminding him that his time is no longer his own. He quickly realizes that his slow start to the morning has landed him in deep trouble with the household resident gamer, and he rushes to get ready before her patience runs out completely. So-young is definitely not in the mood for excuses when he finally manages to make it out of the house, and she makes it clear through the phone that he needs to show his face immediately. Sunhoo heads to the meeting spot with a sense of dread, only to be surprised by how different his sister looks when she is actually dressed for the outside world. She stands by the car in a stylish outfit, mocking him for his lack of punctuality, and reminding him that the early bird is the only one who gets the prize. She notices him staring at her new look and tells him to quit wasting time and just get into the vehicle, leaving Sunhoo to wonder what kind of unpredictable journey the two of them are about to embark on together. Sunhoo found himself completely caught off guard when he finally met up with his older sister, So-young, because she had clearly put a lot of effort into her appearance for their outing. He couldn't help but wonder if today was some kind of special occasion while he stared at her stylish outfit and her brand new car. So-young was her usual prickly self though, and immediately began scolding him for being late because he was too busy admiring the vehicle. She told him that today was just like any other day and that he should stop getting ahead of himself. Once they were on the road, Sunhoo noticed that So-young seemed even more tense than usual, despite the nice weather. He realized that she normally hated driving and wondered why she was taking him somewhere herself instead of using a driver. When he tried to ask where they were headed, she simply told him to stay quiet and follow along without making a fuss. The atmosphere in the car was thick with a mysterious tension that Sunhoo couldn't quite figure out. Their destination turned out to be a high-end screen golf range where So-young decided it was time for a family sports lesson. She claimed that as a pro golfer, it was her duty to teach her younger brother the proper way to swing a club. However, her method of teaching involved getting incredibly close to him to fix his posture. Sunhoo felt his heart racing as she pressed against him to adjust his stance, and he began to feel that this was becoming a very sussy situation for a simple golf lesson. He tried to point out that they were too sussy and expressed concern that someone might walk in and misunderstand what they were doing. So-young was completely unfazed by his panic and informed him that she had actually rented out the entire facility for the day so they wouldn't be disturbed. She teased him for being so embarrassed that he couldn't even focus on the game and eventually decided they should take a break from their intense activity. They moved to a nearby cafe called Café Velour, where the table was quickly covered in an impressive spread of cakes and chocolates. So-young had swapped her golf gear for a hat and sunglasses to maintain her privacy as a famous gaming personality. Sunhoo noted that she didn't even like sweets and wondered why they were sitting in a crowded place surrounded by sugar. He felt a bit awkward being the only one eating while she watched him with an unreadable expression behind her dark lenses. Internal chaos was actually swirling inside So-young as she tried to maintain her cool exterior while her mind kept wandering back to their recent cardio sessions. She found herself blushing deeply as she remembered the intense moments they had shared, and she realized she was the only one getting flustered by the memories. Her frustration reached a boiling point, and she suddenly stood up only to accidentally knock over her drink and spill chocolate all over her expensive clothes. The clatter of the spill caused her sunglasses to fall off, and the people in the cafe immediately began to whisper about whether she was the famous player Jin So-young. Panicked by the looming public scandal, she bolted from the cafe and left Sunhoo sitting there in total confusion. He eventually realized he needed to find her and began a desperate search through the building to make sure she was all right. So-young had retreated to a private room to hide from the public eye and deal with her ruined outfit. She felt incredibly annoyed with herself for being so clumsy and ruining the mood she was trying to set for their outing. She assumed she had made a clean getaway and that Sunhoo wouldn't find her in such a mess, but she was startled by a sudden knock at the door. When she opened it, she found a completely exhausted Sunhoo who had managed to track her down by checking every single door on the floor. He collapsed to his knees in front of her, and Soyoung immediately worried that his health was failing again after his recent hospital stay. She asked if he was okay and if he had run into too many people while looking for her, but Sunhoo just looked up at her with a tired smile. He pulled out her expensive sunglasses and told her that he just wanted to return them since they were so valuable. He assured her that no one had recognized her and that she didn't need to worry about any scandals. This display of genuine brotherly care left Soyoung feeling even more annoyed because her pride was hurt. She realized that while she was busy planning their next sussy encounter, he was just being a helpful and worried brother. She decided that she couldn't let his innocent behavior go unpunished, and she suddenly pinned him down on the bed. She told him that he was being quite the teaser and asked if he wanted to be scolded for his actions. She finally admitted the truth that she had booked this room specifically because she wanted to engage in more cardio activities with him. Sunhoo was left completely speechless as she made it clear that her intentions for the rest of the day were far from innocent and that she was the only one who had been thinking about their next session all along. Soyoung was not about to let the momentum of the day fade away, and she leaned in to ask Sunhoo if he was ready for even more of their intense cardio sessions. Sunhoo found himself unable to say no and simply agreed to go along with whatever she had planned next, despite the overwhelming sussy energy of the situation. While the siblings were busy making plans for their room, the atmosphere outside was far from peaceful. Shinye was currently having a minor crisis after a very revealing phone call with Soyoung's manager, who had accidentally let slip that the two were together at a private place. Shinhye was visibly shaken by the news and wondered if her instincts were failing her as she rushed to find the correct floor. She remembered how she had personally comforted Sunhoo only the night before, and she started to feel a heavy sense of guilt for letting things get so out of hand. She questioned if she was overreacting to the situation, but the memories of Sunhoo's recent behavior made it impossible for her to stay calm. She finally arrived at the door and rang the bell with a trembling finger, hoping that her imagination was just working overtime. Sunhoo opened the door, looking like he had just stepped out of a steam room, and his heart nearly stopped when he saw his mother standing there in a state of high alert. He was completely speechless and wondered how she had managed to track them down so quickly. Shinhye didn't even wait for an explanation before she noticed Soyoung appearing behind him in a matching robe, looking entirely too comfortable. The sight of them together in such a private setting made Shinhye's mind go to a very dark place, and she began to worry that her children were becoming way too sussy for comfort. Soyoung realized that their secret was about to blow up, and she quickly stepped in to manage the damage. She told her mother that she was being way too dramatic and explained that they only ended up in a room because Sunhoo was a clumsy boy who had spilled coffee all over his clothes at the cafe. She even managed to shift the blame onto Miso for making them go out in the first place, claiming that she only wanted to help her brother relax after his recent health scare. Sunhoo could only stand there in awkward silence as he watched his sister weave an elaborate cover story that painted the whole situation as a simple family mishap. Shinhye felt a massive wave of relief wash over her as she realized she had been jumping to wild conclusions about her own son and daughter. She apologized for being such a suspicious parent and felt a bit silly for thinking there was anything sussy going on between them. After Sunhoo went off to change out of his robe, Shinhye took a moment to reflect on her life while the sound of the shower filled the room. She remembered the day she had first adopted Sunhoo and how she had promised the public and herself that she would be his one and only protector. She felt like a terrible person for doubting his character and vowed to trust him more from now on. She decided that the best way to make it up to him was to be as helpful as possible while he finished up his daily activities. She started organizing his scattered clothes and tidying up the room while he stepped away to focus on his exercise routine. As she was cleaning, she noticed a small item had rolled under a piece of furniture, and she decided to crawl down and retrieve it herself. The space was incredibly tight and dark, and she found herself stuck in a very compromising position as she reached for the lost clothing. Just as she was struggling to get back up, Sunhoo walked back into the room and was completely paralyzed by the sight of his mother in such an incredibly sussy pose on the floor. He could only stare in total confusion, wondering what on earth she was trying to achieve and why his life in this household was becoming a permanent state of absolute chaos. Shinhye found herself in a truly sussy situation as she scrambled to find a logical explanation for why she was currently on all fours in the middle of a hotel room. She stammered out a messy excuse about reaching for some fallen laundry and felt a massive wave of relief when she realized the item in her hand belonged to Sunhoo rather than something more scandalous belonging to Soyoung. Sunhoo watched her with a completely blank expression that only made her feel more awkward as she apologized for barging in and promised to make a quick exit. As she hurried away, She couldn't help but feel like a failure of a parent for letting her suspicions get the better of her once again when she should have been focusing on her son's recovery. Meanwhile, Sunhoo was having a very different kind of internal crisis while he watched her leave. He realized that their brief conversation was already pushing him to his absolute limits, and he was incredibly glad they didn't talk any longer. His heart was racing, and he could feel his body reacting to her presence in ways that were definitely not suitable for a family outing. He found himself struggling to keep his composure and realized that holding back his growing frustration was becoming an exhausting daily marathon. His mind began to drift back to the very beginning of their journey together, when he was just a lonely boy sitting in the corner of a quiet orphanage library. Back then, people used to look at him with nothing but pity because they had seen his face on television as a victim of abuse. He remembered the exact moment the room seemed to brighten as a beautiful woman walked in and asked for him by name. Shinhye had introduced herself with a warm smile and a gentle hand on his head, promising him that from that day forward, she would be his mother and he would never have to worry about being hurt again. As they walked out of the building together, the sky began to snow, as if the universe was celebrating his brand new life. Back in the reality of the dark hotel room, Sunhoo was lying in bed with those heartwarming memories clashing against his current sussy thoughts. He realized that his admiration for the woman who saved him had evolved into a set of cardio desires that were becoming impossible to ignore. He felt like a truly irredeemable person for wanting to take advantage of her kindness and turn their relationship into something far more intense. Shinhye was actually leaning over him in the shadows, checking to see if he was finally asleep, while Sunhoo tried his best to maintain his act. He knew that if he got caught in this moment of intense focus, there would be no way to explain the absolute chaos of his current state of mind. The quiet of the hotel room was broken by the sound of Sunhoo's heavy breathing as he struggled with his internal frustrations in what he thought was total privacy. Shinhye was frozen just outside the doorway, watching her son in the middle of an intense personal cardio session and wondering if her own presence in the house was the true source of his wandering cardio thoughts. She felt a mix of genuine shock and a strange sense of maternal responsibility, realizing that she had to decide whether to simply turn a blind eye or intervene before the situation became even more sussy. Her internal debate was suddenly cut short when she accidentally shifted her weight, causing a loud creak to echo through the silent room. Sunhoo snapped out of his daze and sat up in a state of absolute panic, realizing that his mother had been standing there and had witnessed the entire display. He felt like a truly irredeemable person and was convinced that he could no longer stay in the household after being caught in such a sussy act. However, instead of the lecture or scolding he expected, he found Shinhye looking at him with a gentle and understanding expression that caught him completely off guard. She walked closer to the bed and assured him that it was perfectly all right, reminding him of the promise she made long ago to always treasure him and be on his side. She explained that she understood how difficult it must be for him to manage his growing frustrations alone and suggested that he shouldn't have to suffer in silence. In a logic-defying turn of events, she told him that if his cardio needs ever became too hard to endure, he should simply ask her for help instead of hiding away. She looked at him with a soft blush and a gaze that suggested she was fully prepared to provide the personal cardio assistance he clearly required. Sunhoo felt his heart racing as he processed her words, realizing that the woman he admired most was offering to handle his frustrations herself to keep the peace in their family. He looked up at her with a mix of disbelief and intense interest, finally admitting that he had been thinking about this for a very long time. He gathered his courage and confessed that his greatest desire was to finally do cardio with her. The Valentine's Day spirit had officially taken over the household as the scent of melted chocolate filled the air and the glow of a live stream began to shine. Miso was busy in the kitchen, pouring rich chocolate into various molds, meticulously crafting heart-shaped treats, and even some adorable paw prints for her dedicated fans. Not to be left out of the action, Hana was nearby, serving as the designated camera operator, though she couldn't help but grumble about having to work during her precious resting time. The live chat was absolutely exploding with excitement as the fans watched their favorite idol navigate the kitchen, with some even wondering if the voice behind the camera belonged to another famous member of the group. Hana eventually decided that since she was already stuck in the kitchen, she might as well give the fans a real show by offering to sing a snippet of their brand new song. The two sisters shared a moment of professional idol charm before Miso decided she was finally too tired to continue and ended the live broadcast with a warm goodbye. However, the end of the show only marked the beginning of the real sussy activity as Miso continued to fuss over a very specific set of chocolates that had turned out particularly well. She carefully arranged them into a beautiful heart-shaped box, and Hana immediately noticed that these pieces looked far more impressive than the ones intended for the general public. Miso tried to act like it was no big deal, claiming that she was only making a special batch for their brother because she happened to have some leftover ingredients. She insisted that Sunhoo was a pitiful boy who likely wouldn't receive a single Valentine's gift from anyone else, so she felt a maternal urge to ensure he wasn't left out. Hana watched her sister's intense focus and realized that this level of dedication was anything but normal for a simple family gesture. She pointed out the obvious flaw in Miso's plan, suggesting that if she continued to provide such high-quality care and attention to Sunhoo, he would never have any motivation to actually go out and find a real girlfriend. The thought of Sunhoo going out with someone else seemed to cross Miso's mind for only a brief second before she brushed it off with a confident and slightly mysterious smile. She realized that her brother had absolutely no reason to go looking for love in the outside world when he already had her right there to look after him. She made it clear that as long as she was around, he would have everything he could ever want or need, making it very apparent that she intended to keep him all to herself. Sunhoo was finally enjoying a rare moment of peace as he slept in the quiet living room, but his rest was quickly interrupted by the arrival of the household athlete. Miso hopped onto the furniture and woke him up with a playful scare, informing him that he could go back to sleep if he really wanted to, though her presence made that entirely impossible. Sunhoo realized she was up to her usual antics again and tried to get her to move, but Miso was on a mission to get his help with her latest career move. She explained that she needed to take a specific photo for her upcoming album and insisted that her younger brother was the only one who could get the shot just right. Sunhoo wondered why her professional agency wasn't handling this, but Miso claimed that the last photo card they took together was a massive hit because fans mistakenly thought she had a secret partner. She promised that this session would be perfectly normal and involve no heart gestures, but Sunhoo remained skeptical about her definition of normal. The situation took a turn for the sussy when Miso produced a strawberry candy as her chosen prop and told Sunhoo that he needed to feed it to her for the camera. Sunhoo was completely baffled by the request and felt his heart racing as she climbed over him to get into position. The interaction became incredibly sussy, as the entire scene felt like a high-stakes cardio workout rather than a simple photo shoot. Sunhoo eventually had to pull away and tell her that she was going way too far, especially since her choice of clothing was leaving very little to the imagination. Miso simply laughed at his discomfort and teased him for being the one with the sussy mind, while insisting that everyone in the idol world dressed like this. Their chaotic session was finally cut short by the appearance of Shinhye, who walked in and scolded Miso for teasing her brother so relentlessly. Miso made a quick exit, leaving Sunhoo alone with his mother, who seemed to have a very serious topic on her mind. Shinhye moves in close and catches him from behind, bringing up the comments Miso had made earlier about his supposed cardio frustrations. She looked at him with a mix of concern and a very mysterious intensity, and wondered if his recent behavior was truly a result of being a lonely young man. In a logic-defying turn of events, she suggested that if he was worried about how to act around a girl in the future, he could simply practice with her. She proposed a game where they would pretend to be cardio partners and talk to each other as if they were on a real outing, claiming it was just like the acting practice they used to do with her movie scripts. Sunhoo was absolutely floored by the suggestion and reminded her that she was his mother, making the idea of being partners completely ridiculous. He warned her that if they actually went through with it, he might end up doing something even more sussy to her just like before. Shinhye didn't seem bothered by the threat at all and looked him directly in the eyes with a warm blush. She assured him that if her son truly wanted to take things that far, his devoted mother didn't mind one bit, officially leaving Sunhoo to wonder if there was any hope left for a normal life in this house. Sunhoo stood frozen as he tried to process the psychological logic his mother was using to justify their current situation. Shinhye calmly explained that his intense cardio interest in her was likely just a result of him having no real-world cardio experience with other women. She pointed out that since she was the only female figure he had been around since he was a young boy, it was only natural for his feelings to become a bit confused. In a move that defied all traditional family boundaries, she offered to become his official practice partner so he could learn the ropes before finding a nice partner of his own. Sunhoo found the idea of a training partner quite overwhelming, especially when his own mother was the one volunteering for the role. Shinhye assured him with a warm smile that everything would be perfectly fine, and that she was doing this out of pure concern for his development. The tension in the room reached a breaking point, as Sunhoo realized he could not hold back his reactions any longer. He found it impossible to focus on her words when her presence was so distracting, and his heart began to drum against his chest like a frantic athlete. Unable to maintain his composure any further, he suddenly pulled his mother into an intense cardio session. The quiet hallway of the house felt heavier than usual as Sunhoo and Shinhye walked together in the middle of the night. Shinhye found herself constantly adjusting her posture because she could feel her son's gaze burning into her from behind. She realized that her choice of a sussy dress might have been a bit too effective for their training session, and wondered if she was truly prepared for what was about to happen once they reached the cardio room. Just as they were about to slip into the room, the sound of a door opening nearby nearly made Shinhye jump out of her skin. Miso emerged from her room, looking completely drained from her long day of idle duties, and rubbed her eyes while complaining about the noise in the hallway. Shinhye froze in terror, realizing that their secret training session was 1 second away from becoming a public disaster. Miso mumbled about people stomping around like a herd of elephants and demanded some peace and quiet before she retreated back into her own sanctuary. To avoid a massive family scandal, Sunhoo moved with the speed of a pro athlete and pulled his mother into the shadows of the room while covering her mouth to ensure they stayed undetected. The proximity in the dark made the atmosphere even more sussy, as Shinhye felt his presence and realized that Sunhoo was no longer just the little boy she had adopted years ago. They stayed perfectly still until the sound of Miso's door closing signaled that the coast was finally clear. Sunhoo eventually released his grip and noted that Miso was officially out for the count, leaving them with no more obstacles. He looked at his mother with a mix of determination and intense focus, stating that since they were finally alone, they should pick up right where they left off, and suggested that she should be perfectly fine with continuing their personal cardio lesson now that the interruptions were over. Later, Sunhoo found himself completely lost in thought until a sharp shout from Soyoung snapped him back to reality. She was clearly annoyed that he wasn't paying attention to her, and even joked about his lack of focus being a life-threatening mistake. He tried to apologize by explaining that his mind was simply occupied with other matters, but Soyoung wasn't about to let him off the hook so easily. She reminded him that she was officially bored, and that since she had agreed to spend her precious free time with him, he needed to come up with something fun for them to do. Sunhoo couldn't help but feel a bit surprised because she had only just returned from a major competition where she had performed exceptionally well. He watched a recording of her post-match interview on his phone and saw her acting like a total professional while telling the reporters that she just wanted to spend quality time with her family. He realized that her version of family time was far more demanding than the public would ever suspect. Soyoung grew even more impatient and scolded him for not having a plan, because she was the one who had organized their last intense cardio session. Sunhoo struggled to apologize as he found himself haunted by the memory of Shinhye's recent offer to be his exclusive cardio partner. The image of his mother's kindness and her surprising lack of boundaries made it nearly impossible for him to focus on the sister standing right in front of him. Soyoung noticed his hesitation and decided that if he wasn't going to take the lead, she would simply do whatever she wanted with him. She moved in close with a look of pure determination, while Sunhoo realized that he was once again trapped by the unique logic of his household. The tension in the room was suddenly broken by the sound of the door sliding open as Miso made her grand entrance. She immediately demanded to know what the two of them were doing and seemed quite suspicious of the proximity between her siblings. A petty argument quickly broke out over who had the right to be in Sunhoo's room, as Soyoung pointed out that Miso hadn't even bothered to unpack her suitcase before coming over to bother them. Miso wasn't deterred and insisted that she was just as bored and intended to join in on whatever activities were happening. Before Sunhoo could even process the growing crowd, his younger sister Hana appeared and threw her arms around him with a beaming smile. She seemed absolutely delighted by the chaotic scene and mentioned how wonderful it was that their mother wasn't home to keep a watch on them. She looked at Sunhoo with a sussy glint in her eyes and wondered what kind of fun the four of them should get into now that they were alone. Sunhoo feels like a total zombie as he struggles to keep his eyes open, while his sisters continue their relentless pursuit of his attention. He finds himself caught in a high-stakes game of Jenga with Soyoung, who is convinced that his steady hands are the result of some elaborate cheating scheme rather than actual skill. As he calmly navigates the wooden tower, Miso decides to help herself to the snacks that were specifically prepared for him, leading to a minor snack-related dispute at the table. Sunhoo can only sigh as he realizes that his sisters have become increasingly clingy, leaving him with absolutely no personal space to breathe. The scene shifts to the kitchen, where Sunhoo tries to focus on the rhythmic sizzle of meat hitting the hot pan. His peaceful cooking session is quickly interrupted when Hana sneaks up behind him and wraps him, much to his surprise. She marvels at how he seems to be a master of everything, from professional massages to gourmet cooking, all while leaning into him. Sunhoo tries to be the responsible one by warning her that standing so close to a hot stove is a recipe for disaster with splattering oil, but she only sees his concern as a sign of deep care and blushes at the thought of him worrying about her safety. Hana eventually decides to make herself useful by fetching some glasses for the group, leaving Sunhoo to finish the meal in peace. Meanwhile, Soyoung is slumped on the couch, looking completely drained from her recent tournament and wanting nothing more than to melt into the cushions. The atmosphere takes a turn toward the festive when Hana presents a bottle of high-end brandy that she received as a gift, though Soyoung is quick to point out that she is being an idiot for bringing out such strong alcohol for a casual night in. Sunhoo notices how exhausted So-young looks and suggests that she should probably just head upstairs to get some real rest instead of pushing herself. Hana agrees that she should sleep, but the suggestion seems to spark a bit of suspicion in So-young's tired mind. Despite the warnings that she should not overdo it, So-young decides that she is not going to be left out of the drinking session and demands a glass for herself. Sunhoo obliges and keeps her glass topped off, leading to a series of heavy pours that eventually catch up with her. It does not take long for the alcohol to win the battle, as So-young finds herself completely conked out and slumped over on the furniture. Sunhoo tries to wake her up and suggests again that she should move to her actual bed, but she only responds with a muffled command for him to be quiet. He realizes that her current state is largely his fault for being so generous with the refills, and asks Hana to go grab a blanket so she does not catch a cold. Hana agrees, but insists on changing into her own comfortable lounge clothes first, leaving Sunhoo alone with his passed-out sister. The quiet moment is broken by So-young's drunken mumbling as she starts venting her frustrations about Miso. She reaches out and grabs Sunhoo's shirt with surprising strength, demanding that he stop hanging out with their other sister so much. When Sunhoo tries to remind her that they are all just one big family, she makes it very clear that she hates the current dynamic regardless of their ties. She confesses that the only thing she was looking forward to during her entire tournament was the chance to come back and spend quality time with him. Just as the tension between them begins to reach a boiling point, Miso reappears in the room carrying a blanket and wearing a very knowing smile. She watches the two of them for a moment and notes that they used to be so awkward around each other, but they have clearly managed to get much closer lately. Sunhoo feels a wave of panic as he wonders if she was standing in the shadows, watching them the entire time. Miso makes herself comfortable and begins fixing her hair, asserting that she has always been the one closest to him since the very beginning. She admits that she feels a significant amount of jealousy, seeing how much has changed while she was busy with her idol duties and her time in the hospital. She notes that everyone seems to have made a move to get closer to Sunhoo while her back was turned. Leaning in with a look of pure determination, Miso bridges the final gap between them and wonders aloud if there is any way for the two of them to find an even deeper level of cardio than what they have now. Miso starts her morning by seeking some expert advice on how to look more appealing to the person she likes. Her friend on the other end of the phone thinks the whole situation is adorable and suspects this is all about Miso's brother. The friend explains that guys like him are often incredibly dense and will never pick up on subtle hints unless they are given very clear cardio signals. She suggests that Miso needs to take a much sussy approach and essentially mark her territory because no guy would ever turn down a girl who makes her intentions that obvious. Miso takes this advice to heart while she gets ready, realizing that being direct might be the only way to get through to her brother. The scene transitions to a very groggy morning where So-young is preparing to head out for work despite her massive hangover. She scolds Sunhoo for walking her out and admits that the thought of him and Miso drinking alone together was actually bothering her more than the alcohol. Sunhoo looks absolutely drained, leading So-young to point out that he somehow looks even worse than she does. She tells him to go back inside and get some rest, but makes it very clear that she will be coming home tonight to see what happens if he is still acting so tired. Sunhoo can only sigh as he watches her leave, realizing that the peace in the house is likely about to disappear. When Sunhoo finally makes it back to the quiet of his own room, he is startled to find Miso already settled comfortably in his bed. She tells him that she was just thinking of taking a nap there and casually invites him to lie down next to her to provide an arm pillow. Sunhoo is far too exhausted to put up a fight and simply tells her to do whatever she wants so he can finally get some sleep. However, the rest is quickly interrupted as Miso begins admiring his muscular build and clinging to him with no intention of letting him go. Sunhoo tries to suggest that she should go to her own room or that he should move to the living room to avoid any awkwardness, but Miso refuses to budge. She brings up the events of the previous day to see if he truly doesn't remember what happened between them. Sunhoo tries to pretend that he was way too drunk to have any memory of it, but Miso isn't fooled by his act for a single second. She decides to refresh his memory with another sussy move and reveals that she wasn't actually drunk at all when they shared that sussy moment yesterday. She calls him a total idiot for pretending not to know and wonders just how many more clear signals she has to give him before he finally understands what is happening. Sunhoo feels like he is having a total internal meltdown as he lies there with Miso hovering way too close for comfort. He realizes that his long-standing strategy of playing dumb is no longer working because she is straight up calling him out on his act. He tries to regain some dignity by telling her to get off him since the proximity is doing a serious number on his heart rate, but Miso is on a mission for answers. She leans in with a look that suggests she is completely done with the games and demands that he finally address the tension between them. Everything reaches a boiling point when Sunhoo tells her to stop with the jokes. They are both breathing like they just finished an intense workout, and the air in the room is officially thicker than a plot twist. Miso notes that he seems to be falling back into his old habits and playfully labels him a disgrace for whatever is currently crossing his mind. Sunhoo tries to insist that his intentions are pure, but his words are losing their battle against the atmosphere of the room. He finds himself staring down at her while she wonders aloud if she really needs to spell out her desires for him to understand. She informs him that he can just go ahead and do whatever he wants without asking for permission, which is a level of directness that leaves him completely staggered. However, just as he is about to start, a massive wave of guilt hits him like a freight train. He convinces himself that Miso is probably just confused and overwhelmed by the strange dynamics that have taken over their household lately. Memories of their childhood together start flashing before his eyes, reminding him of the simpler times when they were just kids sharing ice cream cones in the sun or walking home under a single umbrella in the rain. He reflects on how they have grown up side by side as family, and he feels a deep sense of responsibility to protect her. He worries that he might end up hurting her if he gives in to his own frustrations. He begins to pull back with a heavy sigh, deciding that being the responsible older brother is more important than the current cardio desire. After being tired from the intense cardio session, later in the shower, Sunhoo is reaching his limit because Miso simply refuses to follow his lead or listen to a word he says. He worries that their sussy encounter in the bathroom is becoming genuinely dangerous, especially if someone were to slip on the wet floor. Miso offers a playful apology, but admits that she simply could not bring herself to let go of him during their cardio moment. Their interaction is abruptly cut short when the sound of So-young's voice echoes through the room. She is clearly suspicious and demands to know if Sunhoo is actually hiding inside the bathroom right now. The two siblings freeze in a state of absolute panic, while Sunhoo signals for total silence. He realizes that he needs to get out and distract her, but his plan hits a major snag when he discovers he has proper clothes nearby to prepare. In a move that is more chaotic than helpful, Miso tosses him her own shirt and tells him to just wear it and head upstairs to keep them from getting caught. Sunhoo tries his best to maintain a cool exterior as he steps out to face the music, but So-young immediately notices that something is very wrong with the current situation. So-young is not easily fooled and wants to know why Miso's personal items are scattered around his room. Her suspicion turns to pure shock when Miso herself emerges from the shadows looking entirely too comfortable. Miso decides to stir the pot by claiming that they spent their time doing all sorts of interesting things together while they were alone. She wraps her arms around him with a smug expression, while So-young struggles to process why her sister is appearing from such a private area in her evening gear. Sunhoo frantically tries to claim it is all just one big misunderstanding, where nothing actually happened, but So-young is having none of it. She is beyond frustrated because she specifically warned them to stop their antics just the day before, and now she sees them at it again. She gives them a moment to gather their thoughts and demands a complete explanation for the chaos, while Sunhoo realizes that he has just added yet another massive secret to his collection. Elsewhere in the house, Shinye is having a very rough day of her own as she stares out her office window. She is already feeling overwhelmed when her phone buzzes with more bad news from her work team. Her current manager has suddenly decided to quit due to personal reasons, leaving her in a very difficult spot right when things are getting busy. She reflects on how urgent the situation has become and realizes she will have to take matters into her own hands to find a suitable replacement as soon as she possibly can. Later, the family meal takes a turn for the unexpected when the conversation shifts to Shinhye's recent management crisis. While the sisters are busy enjoying their food, they learn that Shinhye's manager has suddenly quit, leaving a massive gap in her busy schedule. Shinhye reveals that she actually turned down the company's offer to find a replacement because she had a much more personal candidate in mind. Sunhoo is initially struck with a sense of disbelief at the idea of becoming a professional manager, but Shinhye's gentle persuasion about gaining life experience and the happiness of working together eventually wins him over. He realizes that he truly wants to be useful to her, even if the prospect of the new job feels a bit overwhelming at first. Miso decides that if her brother is going to enter the professional world, he needs to survive her version of a corporate trial first. She takes him to the office and immediately adopts a persona that is far more demanding than anything he experienced at home. She puts him to work with a series of precise coffee orders and criticizes his lack of speed as he navigates the unfamiliar office layout. Inside her mind, Miso is actually hoping that the mountain of shredding, scanning, and filing she assigns him be enough to make him quit. She reflects on how much easier life would be if he simply stayed at home, where she could keep him all to herself without any outside distractions. As the hours tick by and the office grows quiet, Miso returns to find that Sunhoo has not given up as she expected. She discovers him in the dim light of the storeroom, still diligently working through the massive pile of documents she left for him. Her heart softens when she notices a small cut on his hand, and she realizes that her plan to discourage him has only proven how dedicated he really is. Sunhoo explains that he is determined to become a reliable younger brother who can actually support the family. which touches Miso more than she cares to admit. She finds herself confessing that she only acted so harshly because she wanted him to stay home and wait for her instead of entering the busy world of a celebrity manager. The tension in the room shifts from professional frustration to a very sussy level of personal interest. Miso decides that Sunhoo's hard work deserves a special kind of reward and moves in to provide some after-hours cardio relief right there in the storeroom. Sunhoo is paralyzed with a mix of fear and excitement, realizing that there might still be other employees in the building who could walk in at any moment. Miso is completely unfazed by the risk and suggests that they will be perfectly fine as long as they finish their cardio session quickly. Later, Sunhoo tries his best to regain his composure, while Miso reflects on how their latest encounter in the storeroom definitely did not go according to her original plan. She notes that he seems remarkably determined to start his new career as a manager, despite her earlier efforts to keep him safely tucked away at home. Sunhoo simply focuses on fixing his collar and preparing for the long day ahead, while Miso watches him with a mix of frustration and genuine concern about how he will handle the outside world. The scene shifts to the bustling broadcasting station, where Shinhye is waiting for her new manager to arrive. She looks absolutely bold in a dark evening dress, and notes that the previous day's outing with So-young was actually a good thing, since their constant bickering proves they are finally getting closer. Sunhoo officially starts his duties by checking the daily schedule and informing her that she is expected in Hall B for a high-profile music video shoot. Shinhye smiles warmly and tells him that she feels completely reassured just by having him standing right next to her. However, the professional atmosphere at the station is currently in a state of absolute chaos because the lead male actor for the shoot has gone completely missing. The director is in a total panic until he spots Sunhoo standing beside Shinhye and realizes that her handsome young manager is the perfect replacement for their emergency. Shinhye is a bit hesitant because Sunhoo is still so young and inexperienced, but the director insists that they simply have no other choice if they want to finish the project on time. Sunhoo decides to step up to the challenge and informs them that he is fully prepared to fill any role required of him to ensure the shoot is a success. The situation becomes incredibly awkward very quickly, as the director instructs Sunhoo to put on a suit and stay close with Shinhye for an intense, sussy scene. The crew members begin to whisper about the sussy nature of having an adopted son play a role opposite his own mother, which only adds to the immense pressure Sunhoo is feeling. The first few takes are a bit of a struggle, leading the director to call for a lunch break so the two can find a way to make their chemistry more believable. Back in the privacy of the dressing room, Shinhye notes that practicing lines in the comfort of their home is a world away from performing under the bright lights of a professional set. She offers him an easy way out by stating that he doesn't have to go through with it if the pressure feels too heavy, but Sunhoo is determined to see the task through to the end. He explains that he is trying to change himself into a more reliable person who can actually support the family, which moves Shinhye deeply. She realizes that her son is truly doing his best to grow and decides that she simply needs to put her full trust in him. However, her method of helping him find his confidence involves a logic that completely ignores traditional boundaries. She notes that acting is built entirely on real-world experience and realizes that Sunhoo is likely struggling because he is so inexperienced with basic cardio gestures. She looks at him with a mysterious intensity and suggests that they should practice the basic gesture scene together right then and there. She assures him that he has nothing to worry about because his devoted mother is perfectly willing to teach him everything he needs to know. Later, the morning brings a massive wave of internet fame as the music video featuring Sunhoo and Shinhye finally drops. The dramatic cardio gesture scene is causing a total meltdown online, and Miso is right there on the couch, rewatching the clip and teasing Sunhoo about whether that encounter was purely for the cameras. Sunhoo tries to play it cool by insisting it was just part of the job, but Miso is not letting him off the hook easily. She realizes that the director was quite bold to make a mother and son perform such a sussy scene, and wonders if a manager is really supposed to be that dedicated to the role. Miso points out that the music video is already trending and asks if Sunhoo has seen the comments, but he admits he is avoiding them on purpose because they make him feel anxious. She mentions that even the agency CEO is impressed and thinks Sunhoo would have a bright future if he decided to transfer into the entertainment industry himself. Miso then suggests that they should do a live stream together, but Sunhoo immediately shuts down the idea because he thinks an idol channel should focus on her usual professional activities. This leads to a playful fit from Miso, who jokingly calls him honey and accuses him of losing interest in her now that he is a busy manager for their mother. Sunhoo reflects on their long history together and remembers the days when he was the one waiting outside her auditions to offer a comforting head pat after a stressful performance. He has always been her biggest supporter, and that deep-rooted loyalty is exactly what Miso is counting on to get her way. She manages to convince him to help her film a day-in-the-life vlog for her fans, since she is currently the only member of her group without a personal channel. Sunhoo reluctantly agrees to be her cameraman, realizing that his sister is genuinely happy whenever they spend time working on a project together. The filming process turns out to be a total comedy of errors as Miso tries to act like a domestic goddess for the camera. She attempts to make pasta, while Sunhoo frantically warns her about the overflowing pot, and she follows it up by pretending to be an avid reader with a book she likely never intends to finish. Sunhoo cannot help but think she is being quite cute, despite her transparent acting, but the long day of content creation eventually takes its toll. Miso collapses onto the bed in exhaustion and wishes she could just be a penguin at the zoo, so people would find her interesting even when she is doing absolutely nothing. Sunhoo tries to be the responsible producer by telling her to get back up and finish the task she started, but his professional focus is quickly derailed by her choice of clothing. He notices that her gear is becoming increasingly sussy, and suggests that she should probably put on something that covers her more. Miso simply smirks at his obvious discomfort and teases him for being such a disgrace when he is clearly the one struggling to maintain a professional distance. She laughs at how easily he gets embarrassed and reminds him that she only graduated high school last year, officially leaving Sunhoo to wonder if he will ever survive the chaotic energy of this household. Sunhoo finds himself in a state of absolute internal panic as Miso continues to tease him with a level of directness that he never saw coming. He tries to process her latest observations, but his brain is essentially stuck on a loading screen as he realizes his act of playing dumb has officially reached its expiration date. Miso is clearly enjoying his confusion and notes that she is absolutely right about his current state. She tells him that there is no need to be embarrassed about his very obvious cardio reaction while she hovers over him with a smug and knowing smile. She points out that his plan for a quiet nap has taken a very different turn and highlights how quickly he reacted after seeing her. Sunhoo tries to maintain some shred of dignity by claiming that he was just joking around, but Miso is not buying his excuses for a single second. She wonders aloud if he was this frustrated during the entire time he was filming that sussy music video with their mother. She finds his struggle to find a logical explanation quite entertaining and concludes that her efforts to get a reaction out of him have been a total success. Later, in the privacy of the room, Miso joins a group call with her fellow idol teammates and cannot help but brag about her recent victory. She informs the other girls that things have finally escalated and that she has officially claimed her brother as her own. The other members of the group are absolutely stunned by her boldness and demand to know every single detail about how their session actually went. Miso keeps them in suspense by stating that she will leave the more sussy parts of the story to their imaginations. She basks in the glory of her success. However, her excitement is quickly dampened when one of the older girls warns her that a single encounter does not mean the game is over. She explains that if she wants to truly keep him, she needs to provide routine attention, because men will always get snatched up by someone else if their needs are ignored. This advice hits Miso like a ton of bricks, and she finds herself getting unexpectedly emotional at the thought of Sunhoo looking at any other woman in the house. She realizes that she needs to take her efforts to a professional level so that he can never imagine living without her. She decides to use her natural, hardworking athlete nature to study exactly how to tame him once and for all. She returns to Sunhoo with a look of pure determination and tells him to prepare himself for a very long evening. Miso explains that since she was the one who caused his current frustrations, it is only right that she should be the one to provide the necessary cardio relief. Sunhoo tries to protest that the joke has gone way too far this time, but Miso is already moving to follow through on her promise. Later, Shinhye is out at a high-end bar with her close friend, but instead of enjoying the sophisticated atmosphere, she seems to be trying to set a new world record for the fastest way to finish a drink. Her friend notices that she is already quite tipsy and suggests that she should probably pace herself, especially given her status as a famous actress. Shinhye tries to deny that she is feeling the effects of the alcohol, but her messy hair and distracted gaze tell a completely different story. As the night goes on, Shinhye falls into a bit of an existential crisis, wondering aloud if she has actually been a good mother to her children. Her friend jokes about having to act as an unpaid therapist, but realizes that Shinhye is genuinely stressed about her relationship with Sunhoo. The friend remembers Sunhoo as a shy, fragile kid who was so nervous he could barely make eye contact with anyone. She suggests that Shinhye should just be understanding since the boy is likely still immature and finding his way in the world. This comment immediately triggers Shinhye's intense pride, and she becomes hilariously defensive. She snaps back that her Sunhoo is anything but immature, and insists that he has actually become quite a manly and reliable figure lately. She quickly pulls out her phone to provide visual evidence, practically shoving a photo of him in his new suit into her friend's face. Shinhye goes on a full-blown bragging spree, listing his virtues like she is reading from a professional resume. She highlights how he is tall, handsome, and an incredibly talented piano player, She mentions that even the directors on her set were impressed with his acting skills, noting that he clearly takes after his mother when it comes to natural charisma. She emphasizes that he is kind, diligent, and has become a much more dependable person since the last time her friend saw him. After taking a good look at the photo, the friend is forced to admit that Shin-hye is right. The day begins in the quiet corridors of a hospital where Dr. Yoon Seo is finishing her rounds. She is the kind of professional who commands the room without saying a word, moving with a grace that makes her lab coat look more like a designer cape. Her reputation for being cool and untouchable is well known among the staff, and she proves it by effortlessly sidestepping a dinner invitation from a hopeful colleague. She simply notes that she is busy and has patience to check on, leaving the poor man standing in the hallway while she heads back to the sanctuary of her office. In the privacy of her workspace, Seo settles in to finish a session with a familiar face. Sun-hoo is sitting across from her, looking much more composed than he did 6 months ago when his stress was so overwhelming that he couldn't even get behind the wheel of a car. He tells her that he feels significantly better and calls her his hero, with a level of sincerity that would make anyone else blush. Seo just offers a small smile and notes that his progress is admirable, though she makes sure to book him for a follow-up appointment next month to keep him on the right track. Once he leaves, Seo takes a moment to herself and reflects on her decade-long career as a psychiatrist. She has listened to countless stories as varied as the people who tell them, but her professional focus is soon interrupted by a buzzing phone. She finds a message from Shin-hye, inviting her over for a weekend visit and mentioning that Sun-hoo would be very happy to see her again. Seo realizes that her friend is being quite diligent about her son's recovery and decides that a home visit might be the perfect way to see how he is truly doing. As she prepares to head out, her mind drifts back to the very first time she met Sun-hoo years ago. Back then, he was a fragile boy who sat in her office with his head bowed, wondering if it was even okay for him to share his thoughts with her. Seeing how much he has grown in the past 5 years fills her with a sense of curiosity. She decides to trade her professional attire for a sleek, stylish outfit and high heels, looking forward to seeing the man he has become. At the family home, Sun-hoo is enjoying the rare luxury of a quiet house since Miso and the older sister are both out with their own plans. Shin-hye has spent the morning preparing a massive lunch spread, looking incredibly elegant even while tying an apron over her dress. She casually mentions that they have a special guest arriving today, which leaves Sun-hoo wondering who could possibly be visiting them on such short notice. The doorbell rings right on cue, and Shin-hye sends her son to play the role of the welcoming host. When Sun-hoo opens the door, he is completely stunned to find Dr. Yoon Seo standing there, looking like she belongs on a magazine cover rather than in a hospital. He can barely process the fact that his doctor is standing in his foyer, and he manages to stutter out her name while she greets him with a warm and knowing expression. Lunch is a pleasant but slightly intense affair as Seo comments on how much Sun-hoo has changed since they last met. She apologizes for being overseas during his recent health scare and listens intently as he explains that he has been feeling much better lately. Eventually, she suggests that they should move to his room for a private consultation to see how his mind is handling the recent changes in his life. Sun-hoo is a bit nervous but agrees to lead her upstairs to his personal space. Once they are alone, Seo notes that his room is remarkably clean for a young man, and Sun-hoo admits that he tries his best to stay organized to avoid being scolded by his sisters. He credits his family for helping him reduce the frequency of his panic attacks, but the atmosphere shifts when Seo sits beside him on the bed. She leans in, stating that she needs to ask a very specific question for the sake of his mental health. She looks him directly in the eyes and wonders aloud if he still manages to see the women in his household simply as family members, or if his perspective has started to shift into seeing them as something else entirely. Sun-hoo finds himself in the middle of a very honest session with Dr. Seo, where he finally admits that his heart starts racing whenever he is around his new family members. He tries to explain that the feeling is confusing, but the doctor seems to want him to dig even deeper into his own psyche. She leans in with a look of pure professional interest and tells him that she needs him to be completely truthful about his current state of mind. Sun-hoo struggles to maintain his composure while he tries to convince himself that he was just a young and naive boy back when they first met. The atmosphere in the room becomes incredibly heavy as Seo moves close to check his reaction. Sun-hoo feels his heart drumming against his ribs like a frantic athlete and tells her that she is preparing too much for a standard medical evaluation. Seo doesn't seem bothered by his panic at all and reminds him with a playful smile that they used to be this close all the time when he was little. She laughs and calls him cute before deciding that a simple office visit won't be enough to solve his problems. She informs him that she wants to do a much more thorough evaluation and asks if he is free to meet her the following day. The next morning, Sun-hoo is standing in the middle of a crowded city center, feeling completely out of place in his smart casual attire. He wonders if he should be worried about a simple consultation, but his thoughts are interrupted when he spots the doctor approaching through the crowd. She has traded her white lab coat for a stylish summer look that leaves Sunhoo completely speechless. He finds himself spacing out as he realizes that she looks nothing like the famous therapist people usually see on television. Sunhoo tries to act natural, but he is clearly flustered as he notes that she has never worn anything like this during their previous sessions. He manages to tell her that the look suits her well, though he is still confused about why they aren't heading to her usual office. Seowa drops a massive bombshell by explaining that she never actually said today was for a consultation. She playfully suggests that they might as well call it a outing and tells him not to think too hard about the details. They eventually make their way to a quiet secondhand bookstore that she likes to visit whenever she has a rare day off. She explains that she hasn't been able to rest properly lately and needed a bit of a pick-me-up. Sunhoo still feels a bit awkward and mentions that he generally avoids crowded places because he always feels like someone is staring at him. Seowa listens with a gentle expression and notes that he clearly has a very strong sense of responsibility when it comes to his work and family. She reassures him that, contrary to what he might believe, most people are far too focused on their own lives and interests to spend their time staring at others. She suggests that it would be wonderful if he could find something he truly enjoys just for himself, leaving Sunhoo to ponder what his own version of a pick-me-up would look like. Their peaceful literary outing is suddenly cut short when the sky turns dark and a massive downpour begins to soak the city. They run through the rain to find cover and end up huddled under an awning, both completely drenched from head to toe. Sunhoo tries to shake the water from his hair and laments the fact that he didn't hear a single weather report about rain today. He realizes that they are in a very sussy spot when he hears some nearby strangers whispering about whether the beautiful woman beside him is actually the famous therapist from TV. To protect her privacy, Sunhoo instinctively moves closer and grabs his arm to shield her from the public eye. He tells her that it is dark enough that people won't be able to see her clearly as long as they stay close together. Seowa teases him for trying to stay close, but she quickly thanks him for the thoughtful gesture. Realizing that the rain isn't going to stop anytime soon, and they are both shivering, she looks at him with a mysterious intensity and invites him to come back to her house to dry off. The rainy evening continues inside the elegant apartment of Dr. Seowa, where Sunhoo is busy drying his hair and trying to process how he ended up in the private sanctuary of such an extraordinary person. He looks around at the impressive awards and professional certificates on the wall, feeling like a bit of an intruder in a place that reflects 10 years of dedicated psychological expertise. The table is already set with a sophisticated spread of snacks and wine, making him realize that his doctor is just as polished at home as she is at the hospital. Sunhoo is sitting on the sofa in his comfortable lounge gear when Seowa finally makes her entrance, having traded her rain-soaked clothes for a silk slip that definitely catches his attention. He tries to maintain his professional distance, but his composure starts to slip as she settles in beside him. He notes that she must have spent a significant amount of time preparing such a gourmet meal, but Seowa quickly bursts his bubble by admitting she simply used a delivery app while he was busy in the shower. She offers a playful smile and wonders if he is secretly disappointed that she didn't personally slave over a hot stove just for him. Sunhoo quickly insists that the food looks wonderful regardless of how it arrived, and he focuses on pouring the wine to hide his growing embarrassment. Seowa admits that she is nowhere near as skilled in the kitchen as his mother, but she believes that as long as the food tastes good, the effort doesn't really matter. She notes that the rain outside is showing no signs of stopping, and informs him that she has already sent a message to Shinye to let her know he will be staying the night for an extended consultation. Back at the family home, Shinye is enjoying her own dinner when she receives the update and relays the news to the rest of the household. She mentions that Sunhoo is currently with the doctor and will likely be staying over to continue his recovery session. This news causes a minor eruption of concern from the resident athlete, who finds the idea of an overnight consultation incredibly suspicious. Miso wonders why their mother is being so casual about the situation when she has no idea what could be happening between a young man and a woman in a private setting. Shinhye tries to calm her down by reminding her that the doctor is a trusted family friend, but Miso is clearly not convinced that this is a standard medical procedure. Back at the apartment, Sunhoo is trying to ignore the constant buzz of messages from his sisters when Seowa notifications lighting up his phone. She playfully teases him by wondering if he has a secret partner who is worried about his whereabouts, which sends Sunhoo into another minor panic. He quickly explains that it is just his sister checking in, but Seowa leans in with a mysterious glint in her eyes and wonders if he sees his sister as a partner too. Sunhoo can only tell her to stop joking around as he realizes the alcohol is starting to make his head feel a bit light. The doctor decides that her patient needs a little more personal attention and leans in to tell him that he has something messy on his mouth. Sunhoo freezes as she reaches out to clear away a stray crumb, but she turns the simple gesture into a high-stakes psychological game by maintaining eye contact the entire time. She notes that he is a very cute patient and tells him that he is more than welcome to keep staring. Seowa takes off her glasses and shifts the conversation back to his mental health, wondering if there has been anyone else besides his family causing him stress lately. She specifically asks if her own presence has been a source of frustration for him, and Sunhoo finally gathers his courage to be honest. He admits that even when he was much younger, he always thought she was incredibly pretty and charming. Seowa seems quite pleased with the compliment and notes that, since the atmosphere is right and they are both starting to feel the effects of the wine, it is probably time for them to head off to sleep. The bright morning sun spills into the bedroom as Dr. Seowa slowly wakes up, feeling much more rested than she expected after such a rainy and intense evening. As she stretches and notices the empty space beside her, she assumes that Sunhoo must have made a quiet exit to head home. She realizes that his early departure was probably for the best, as waking up together might have created an even more awkward atmosphere for their professional relationship. She begins to wonder if she should check in with Shinhei to see if her friend is angry about the sudden overnight consultation, but her thoughts are interrupted by a very delicious and unfamiliar aroma wafting through the apartment. It definitely doesn't smell like the cold takeaway containers she usually relies on for her morning energy. Following her nose to the kitchen, she is genuinely stunned to find Sunhoo still very much present and looking surprisingly professional in an apron. He greets her with a cheerful smile and lets her know that breakfast is officially ready, mentioning that he was just about to come and wake her up. Seowa stares at the impressive spread of rice, soup, and various side dishes, realizing that he spent his entire morning working over her stove. Sunhoo explains that he couldn't stop thinking about how she always eats takeaway and felt a strong sense of responsibility to ensure she had at least one real home-cooked meal before he left. It has been such a long time since anyone has cooked for her that Seowa finds the gesture incredibly touching. She notes that her patient is actually a much better cook than he looks and finds himself quite adorable as he waits for her approval. She realizes that having someone look after her for a change is a very pleasant experience and playfully suggests that he should just stay for a few more days to keep her fed. She even offers to pay him in pocket money if he agrees to be her permanent chef, leaving Sunhoo to wonder if she is actually serious about the new job offer. Later, Sunhoo decides to take his mother's advice to heart by staying exactly where he is, figuring that a little extra rest away from his chaotic household is just what the doctor ordered. Seowa finds the situation quite amusing and wonders if he actually intends to move in, but Sunhoo explains that since he has no immediate duties, he might as well enjoy the peace. He realizes that staying alone while she is at work might be a bit strange, but Seowa quickly clarifies that she has officially taken a leave of absence until the weekend to fully focus on her own recovery. As they settle into a more relaxed rhythm, Sunhoo can't help but notice the tragic state of her refrigerator, which seems to be stocked almost exclusively with various brands of beer. He points out that skipping breakfast and relying on hospital lunches and evening takeaways is a fast track to getting sick, but Seowa remains unfazed as she reaches for another can. She defends her choices by stating that since she is on holiday, drinking every day is practically a requirement for a successful break. She reminds her patient that even doctors need to relax sometimes, admitting that drinking alone in a private apartment can get a bit lonely without someone as cute as him around. Sunhoo realizes she is being completely serious and offers to whip up some snacks to accompany her daytime drinking session. While he heads back to the kitchen, Seowa checks her phone and sees a friendly message from Shinhei, who seems happy that Sunhoo has so much to talk about with his doctor. This sparks a bit of a competitive streak in Seowa as she looks at her phone with a mysterious smile, wondering if she should find a way to keep him all to herself. She feels like having such a great friend like Shinhei is a blessing, but she is more than ready to reap some extra benefits for herself. The scene shifts to a hazy, half-forgotten moment from their intense cardio time together, where Sunhoo finds himself struggling to clear the fog from his mind. He notes that the alcohol from the night before is still doing a number on his senses, making the doctor's sudden personal attention feel like a vivid dream. Seowa seems to be enjoying the interaction immensely, and notes how adorable he looks when he is completely at her mercy. Once the morning fully settles in, things take a slightly corporate turn when Seowa presents Sunhoo with a generous amount of pocket money for his help with the housework and the gourmet meal. Sunhoo is visibly flustered and tries to argue that the amount is way too much for a few simple chores, but the doctor tells him to just accept the gift. She explains that, since she has plenty of money to spare, he shouldn't feel burdened by her generosity. She frames the payment as an advance for his next visit, making it very clear that she expects him to return for another round of intense consultations. Sunhoo finally makes it back to the home front after his long session with the doctor, but the atmosphere is far from a warm welcome. He finds his mother standing there looking deeply troubled, her eyes practically demanding an explanation for his overnight disappearance. Sunhoo tries to play it cool by claiming that one thing simply led to another, but his vague excuses do not seem to be doing him any favors. The situation only gets worse when Miso enters the room with a look of pure irritation, adding her own layer of scolding to the mix. She is beyond frustrated that he stayed out all night, and she makes no effort to hide her growing resentment toward the doctor. Sunhoo tries to defend his medical sessions, but Miso is convinced that he is being far too dense to realize the therapist's true intentions. This leads to a heated exchange where even Shinhei has to step in to lecture Miso on her lack of manners toward her elders. Miso eventually reaches her boiling point and storms off, feeling like she is always the one cast in the role of the bad guy in every family dispute. Later that evening, the house feels heavy, with an awkward silence that is almost suffocating. Sunhoo is left alone with his thoughts until his phone buzzes with a call from Hana, who is more than happy to point out just how clueless he really is. She explains that Miso is not just annoyed by his absence, but rather by the fact that he chose to side with the doctor over his own sister during their argument. Hana provides a bit of insider information, revealing that despite her tough exterior, Miso actually finds comfort in crowded and bustling places when she needs to clear her head. Sunhoo realizes he needs to make things right and decides to check in on Miso, only to find himself caught in another embarrassing situation when she catches him peeking into her room. He quickly tries to pivot by mentioning the local fireworks festival, hoping that a festive outing might be enough to break the tension. Miso acts like the whole idea is a massive inconvenience and scolds him for creeping around, but the way she rushes him out so she can change suggests she was secretly waiting for a reason to forgive him. When she finally emerges in her stylish outfit with a noticeable blush, she informs him that they are officially late and need to get moving. The evening begins with Sunhoo taking the wheel and feeling quite proud of his newfound night driving skills. Miso is sitting in the passenger seat and looking a bit skeptical about the whole situation, secretly wondering if they are going to make it to their destination without an accidental detour into a guardrail. Sunhoo reassures her that he has been practicing specifically with the car she recommended and tells her to stop worrying so much and just try to relax. Miso leans back and realizes that her brother is actually putting in a lot of effort to fix her bad mood, which only makes her feel more guilty about her earlier explosive behavior when she acted like a total menace to the household peace. They eventually arrive at the base of a famous viewing tower, where the local fireworks festival is about to kick off. Miso is already dreading the experience because she has spent her entire life hating anything that involves grass, insects, or uphill movement. She wonders why they are subjecting themselves to this outdoor torture when they could be at home, but she follows him anyway because his genuine desire to show her something beautiful is hard to ignore. Sunhoo is clearly struggling to maintain his reliable man persona as he huffs and puffs up the steep incline, looking more like a defeated marathon runner than a protective brother. Miso notes that his lack of aerobic exercise is finally catching up with him and wonders why he is being so stubborn, instead of just admitting that he hates hiking as much as she does. When they finally reach the summit, they find that the entire city had the exact same idea, and the area is absolutely packed with families and shouting children. Miso is feeling increasingly annoyed by the crowd and the discomfort of the hike, but Sunhoo remains determined to find them a perfect spot. Just as she is about to suggest they head back, the first colorful explosion lights up the night sky and catches her completely off guard. She realizes that her brother dragged his tired body all the way up this mountain just to see her happy, which is a level of dedication that hits her harder than any of the fireworks. As the show continues, Sunhoo is visibly shaking from the exertion and the sheer nerves of being alone with her in the dark. Miso notices him trembling like a leaf and realizes that if he doesn't find a way to calm down soon, he might actually pass out right there on the mountainside. She decides that a standard pep talk won't be enough for someone in this state and takes matters into her own hands with a level of directness that only makes sense in their unique household. She prepares in a sussy way and tells him to focus entirely on her, suggesting that he needs to use her own presence to ground himself and keep his heart from leaping out of his chest. Later, the morning light filters through the quiet house as the youngest sister, Hana, breaks the silence by announcing that their mother has finished preparing a meal. Sunhoo rubs the sleep from his eyes and emerges from his room, looking every bit like a man who has had a very long and exhausting week. He happens to cross paths with Miso in the hallway and tries to act like a polite brother by asking if she managed to get some decent rest after their late-night outing. Miso gives a somewhat non-committal response as they begin to make their way downstairs together. The air between them is still a bit thick with the remnants of their previous night on the mountainside, and Sunhoo decides to see if he can keep the momentum going. He casually wonders if she has any specific plans for the rest of the day once they finish eating. When she indicates that she will be staying at home, Sunhoo decides to drop a massive verbal bombshell with a level of confidence that catches even him by surprise. He looks at her and wonders if she would like to engage in some personal cardio with him after their meal is over. This bold suggestion causes Miso to stop dead in her tracks, as her brain tries to process the fact that her once shy brother is now making very direct moves in the middle of a sunny afternoon. She stares at him with wide eyes, completely stunned by the realization that he is no longer waiting for her to take the lead. As she continues down the stairs with a noticeable blush, she can't help but mumble to herself that he must be losing his mind. She finds it absolutely insane that he would want to jump into such an intense session in the middle of the day while the rest of the family is right there. She finds herself deeply flustered by his sudden change in attitude, wondering why he is being so incredibly obvious with his signals, and if this new, more assertive version of Sunhoo is something she is actually prepared to handle. Later, the house is filled with a heavy atmosphere as Shinhai pauses in the hallway, wondering about the unusual sounds echoing through the quiet rooms. Downstairs on the sofa, Miso is lounging in a very relaxed state, laughing to herself about how obvious the situation has become. Soyoung stands nearby, looking incredibly irritated, her expression souring as Miso continues to make light of the recent trouble. Shinhye tries to maintain order, telling her daughter to watch her tone when speaking about her elder sister, but Miso simply shrugs it off, claiming she never actually named anyone in particular. The tension is temporarily broken when Sunhoo finally makes his appearance, though he is looking a bit worse for wear, with his right arm tucked securely into a white medical sling.